Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Proactive Happiness Management series. So in today's episode, we're going to talk about what I consider to be one of the biggest challenges to taking a management role. And that is making the transition from an individual contributor role to a manager role. So I don't know anyone out there who would disagree with the statement that going from an individual contributor to a manager role, to that leadership position, your first line of management, I don't know anyone who would not say that that is the most difficult transition that you will probably make in the course of your career. So let's talk about a few things that you can expect when you make that transition, and hopefully some things that you can be prepared for and kind of get in front of before the day comes. Or for those of you who are already there, you can leverage these things to make your transition a little bit easier. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is moving from a preparer role to that of a reviewer or a delegator, depending on how you handle it. Okay, so this is something that I find all of us naturally really struggle with. It's really hard from going from doing a job and preparing something for X number of years, something that you really took pride in, to stepping away from that. And it's also the familiar, right? So stepping away from that and giving it to somebody else and kind of relinquishing that. That is one of the most difficult things that I see with people who make this transition. So be mindful of that as you're going into it, and you've got to let it go. And I'll tell you why it's so important that you let this go. So you are making this huge transition in your career. This is a really important time for you. You're learning a ton. You're learning a new role. You're learning new management skills. You're learning all of this different stuff. And if you try to divide your attention and continue focusing on some of your former preparer roles, you're not going to have enough time for anything, and something's got to give. And what's going to happen is that you'll be delivering performance that is subpar in all of the different categories, which does you no good. So it's really important to figure out a way to relinquish that stuff and push it down to the people who are now reporting to you. Another thing, obviously, I don't think this will be a surprise to anybody watching the video, but feedback, right? You're going to have to be giving feedback. I always like to tell people, and we have a separate episode devoted to feedback, so I'm not going to talk about it a ton in this episode, but I always tell people feedback as a manager, as a supervisor, as someone who is responsible for the development of others, you cannot effectively do your job unless you are giving feedback. And it makes people cringe, both on the receiving end and on the giving end. But it's vital. It really is vital to somebody's development. You think about all of these superstar athletes out there. Do you think that these people ever would have gotten to the places that they are without coaching and without feedback? Of course not, right? So it seems simple when I put it in that kind of a light, but you get my point, right? Another thing that you can expect that's a big change from an individual contributor role is what I call walking the line. So as somebody who is now the first line of management, one of your responsibilities is going to be walking the line between management and your team. And it can be really challenging because you have a responsibility to both parties, right? You are now officially lumped in with part of management, but you also have a responsibility to be the voice, to be the person who goes to bat for the people who work for you, right? So walking that line can be really challenging, and that becomes a big responsibility and something that you need to take very seriously. Something else I will say, and this is something that I think does not get a lot of attention or doesn't get talked about often enough. And that is you will now assume a major listening role. So if listening is not really your forte, you may want to go ahead and start sharpening those listening skills, because as a manager, a lot of people are going to come to you with concerns, with issues, and I hate to say it, but a lot of times you will end up being in a position of almost an informal therapist. A lot of people on the team, automatically, if you are the manager, there is a certain degree of trust that comes with that position. They expect confidentiality, and there are certain times where people will have to tell you some very personal things that are going on because they're going to impact their work. So really, that can be a big change from sitting next to somebody to them coming to you and telling sometimes some of their deepest, darkest secrets. So maintaining that confidentiality is huge. And listening, letting them talk. Sometimes, honestly, people will come into your office and they just want to vent. So let them, right? Just listen. So start working on those listening skills. It'll pay off in the end. Another thing that's a big transition from being an individual contributor over to the management role is making yourself available, right? As a manager, one of your primary responsibilities is to help your team, right? So if you don't make yourself available, if you don't make time for your team to come and have access to you, you're kind of falling down on the job. So, and I say in multiple videos in this episode, when I talk about making yourself available, it doesn't mean that when somebody walks through your door that you have to drop everything and immediately tend to whatever it is that they need. But you do need to get back with them. You need to set up a time to talk to them. You need to follow through with whatever it is that they need so that you can be there to help them. Because a lot of times the people on your team, there are things they can only do so much, and there are a lot of things that they're going to need your help with to get it across the finish line. So these are a few things that you should be prepared for as you take that transition from individual contributor to manager or supervisory role. Obviously, there are going to be a lot of differences, but these are some of the things that I feel like people struggle with the most or sometimes are the most surprised by. So I would highly suggest, thinking about these things, especially the listening thing, right? Think about how you're doing, how your listening skills are now. That's an easy thing to work on. Start working on it today and try and incorporate it into who you are so that when you step into that manager role, if you're not already there, you can go ahead and already have that listening thing down. So hopefully you found some things interesting and valuable in this episode today. Subscribe to our channel below so you don't miss any future episodes, and check out the other episodes that we already have in the series. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day.